tonight's Bible study, the first one for this year. And we are starting out doing Proverbs as that was requested. And Proverbs is really a part of what we call wisdom literature. The Old Testament is divided into different sections. The first part is called the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books, or the book of Moses. The next part is called history. So you have 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd King, 1st, 2nd Samuel, Ruth, Esther, etc. The next part, we have Psalms, which is a hymn book, and then we have wisdom literature. And the wisdom literature are Proverbs, Song of Solomon, Job. So then the last part is prophets, and then prophets are divided into major prophets, minor prophets. We're looking at the Book of Wisdom, and the interesting thing about the Book of Wisdom is with Psalms, for example, most of the Psalms was written by David, but there are other people that wrote some Psalms. Proverbs, most of them are also written by Solomon, but there are other Proverbs that were written by other people. If you think about it, in Ecclesiastes, another book of wisdom written by Solomon, he said that there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that has been, was done before, will be done again. In Ecclesiastes, just like Proverbs. The book of Proverbs, obviously, we have what we call 34 chapters, and each chapter have verses. But originally, the Bible, both Old and New Testament, did not have chapter and verse. That's a superficial creation that they created. I don't know if y'all knew that somebody created and start putting chapter and verse, and just to make it easier to refer to certain parts for reference. Proverbs really starts off the book of wisdom. There's a couple others books that already mentioned, for example, Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, Proverbs. There's some other books that are in the book of wisdom that we don't have in our Bible. The interesting thing about Proverbs, it is not something that is just unique to the Jews. And Proverbs are really wise sayings. They try to teach you lessons, and most Proverbs are really written in a way so you can remember it. I remember when I was in high school, I studied Poor Richard's Almanac. As an American, most people remember Benjamin Franklin, and he collected wise, pithy sayings, a penny saved is a penny earned, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. And, he had all these things to teach you valuable lessons. And in a society that is not very literate, having these catchy things that you can teach somebody that could give them life lessons. And that's what I want for us to understand. Proverbs is trying to teach life lessons in a very concise way. Some people look at Proverbs because there's 31 of them, read one proverb or one chapter per day and try to study it. I remember going through that as an older adult for a year, reading a proverb, depending on the time of this, where I was in my development. For example, reading through the Bible once a year, reading a proverb once a day, for a full year, so you read it 12 times. The very interesting thing I discovered about the Bible, and specifically about Proverbs, is you read it once, And it's unlike other books. When you read it a second time, a third time, a fourth time, you get different insights. And it all depends on your personal growth as an individual. So, as we go through these Proverbs, you have to remember this is my growth at this point. It's not. I remember the first time, the very first proverb we were going to deal with. I remember I was a 13-year-old kid when I first read this in Sunday school with my mentor, Rice Buchanan, or Mr. B. And he read this to me and talked to me about it. And so you'll see some of that coming out. Because in reality, the best people to learn about Proverbs are kids. Before they get into trouble, for them to learn from the wisdom and the ideas of the older generation. But let's be realistic. How many kids are willing to sit and listen to somebody in their 70s or 80s? You know, they would rather be doing something else. I was very fortunate. As a 13-year-old kid, Mr. Buchanan was 72, and he was able to impart some of his knowledge and wisdom. And so, as we read through Proverbs, here we will see that they're written by Solomon, most of them, not all of them. And Solomon is purported to be the wisest man that ever lived. I say purported to be because as you read through the book of history, some of the things that Solomon did, I think it was pretty stupid.
Wow.
You know, all those wives and concubines and all that, you know. I only have one wife and I, you know. And so, you know. So there you go, you know. So there's wisdom in different things. So let's go ahead and start. We'll read the first 7 verses. We'll stop and talk about those, and then we'll read the next 11, 12 verses. And obviously we won't finish Proverb 1 today. It's one of the longest ones. Some of the other Proverbs we'll zip through in one day. Okay? And it starts with this reading. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discernment to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the saying and the riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instructions. I don't know about you, but this is a fantastic introduction. It's filled of so much stuff.
Yeah, that's stuff.
Okay, it's written by Solomon, who is the king, and he's king. And so this is after David had died. Most of the Psalms were written already. Solomon became king, and after he was king for a while, he wrote these. So it wasn't like he was a young king, it was older. And he points out the purpose for this is for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding the words of insight. So let's talk about gaining wisdom and instruction. There's 2 words here. First one is wisdom. The other one is instruction. And then the third word that he talked about is knowledge. And let's be realistic. We use different words to describe different things. For example, knowledge is stuff that you can learn in books at school. etc. So if you study math, you learn to add 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. If you study grammar, you learn it's a subject, a noun, pronoun, verb, etc. That's knowledge. But have y'all ever encountered people who have a lot of book knowledge, but they are socially inept?
Oh, yeah.
Or have y'all ever encountered other people like I did in the prison? They are street smart, but lack book knowledge. I met several inmates. They were very insightful in life experience and no books. One of them couldn't even read. I had to start teaching reading in the chapel, for people to learn to.
Yeah.
So we can see that there are extremes. But wisdom has something that is different. Wisdom is where you take knowledge and street knowledge and everything and put it in to make a better
Try to learn.
choice.
Make it whole.
Yeah. And so what we want to see is the first step, for example, when you go to pre-K and then kindergarten and first grade, and that is you learn the basics first. Okay? And then as you move up, and it doesn't matter which subject you take, be it language or math or, I'll use math. You first learn to count 1 to 10, and then you learn to count to 100, and then you learn add and subtract, and then you learn multiplication and division, and you learn, multiplying by one number, then 2 numbers, 3 numbers, and multiple numbers. And I remember after that, you go into algebra. And they start putting in letters. And you have algebra 1, algebra 2, and then you get thrown into geometry and trigonometry, and then calculus, and the list goes on and on. So we can see that in knowledge you can gain different what? Levels and layers. And each level though is dependent upon the previous level.
Yeah.
For example, in reading you learn ABCs, and you learn the difference between consonants and vowels and how to blend them, and
Build a good foundation.
and then you have to learn the difference between noun, pronoun, adjective, verb, adverb, conjunctions, and but if I talk to some of y'all about the nominative case, y'all will look at me like I'm crazy or accuse it. The reality is that's because English learned its grammar and syntax from Latin. But most people get to high school and college and they kind of cap it off.
Yeah.
So the reality is all language, science, whatever, build one upon the other. Mm-hmm. Even in science, you learn the general basic science at first, and then you learn biology or chemistry, and we have all these different branches of knowledge. But just because a person is book smart doesn't mean that, and the best thing to do is to be able to pull different sects of knowledge and to have true wisdom. And so here Solomon says, for gaining wisdom. And Solomon put wisdom more important than instruction. Like a teacher instruct you in ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, or even higher level. For understanding words of insights. Words of insights. Let's talk about words for a few moments. We all have heard a little pithy saying, which is a proverb: sticks and stones may break my bone, but words will never hurt me. The reality is, we know that words can be the most hurtful, depending on the word that somebody uses. It can. And in reality, the better our vocabulary, the bigger our world. I learned this when I went to college. The more words you learn, the more you can see and the nuances of word. And, we take, for example, in English, a lot of words, and we don't know the etymology or the history of words. Again, words of insights is so important. As English speakers, I'll use some example. If I say the word cow, do y'all think of a live animal or a dead animal? A live animal. If I say the word beef, do y'all think of a live animal or a dead animal? A dead animal, okay? And the reality is, the reason we have two different words that originally meant the same thing, whereas in Spanish, you have to say carne de, vaca, the flesh of, or vaca. Why does English have a word that means dead animal and one that means live animal? The reason is the development of the language.
Have you seen the movie Webster putting the words together?
Yes.
Webster.
Yeah. So, and that's the point. Here we see we need to have insights into words. Because the more we can understand, the better. I mean, that's the big difference between a person who is a doctor and a person who is not a doctor. They understand more, they have more insight into a particular field. So the higher the field, the more insight you have in that particular field. And so Solomon is saying, and I like the word, for gaining.
For gaining insight.
In other words, we can all gain, and gain means to add what? More. To add more. It's like this. I like this word. For better. To better oneself. In other words, wherever level we are, we can gain and become better. Better is such a nice word. I love it.
And we can always learn.
And we can always learn. We can always learn and gain. So proverb is for us to gain or get better in wisdom, in instruction, and in understanding. Words of insight. And it goes on. For receiving instruction in prudent behavior. So one thing is head knowledge. Another one is action. Again, Proverbs, we have a saying, actions speak louder than words. Our behavior tells us more about who we are than what we say. Have you ever heard people say, he's all talk and no action? Or concerning preachers, they tell one thing, but they live their lives another way. Again, Proverbs are so consistent. As a matter of fact, if we sat around and talk about different things, we've all heard it before. But here, not only head knowledge, Solomon wants us to gain, to be better in our what? Behavior. Prudent behavior. So receiving instructions in prudent behavior. I remember when I was a little kid, my world, and here's the reality, as kids, our world usually start small, with just our immediate family, and then it might expand to church or neighbors, and then it might expand to when we get to school, and I remember my world was small, and I remember I was 6 years old, and my mother trusted me to go to the grocery store and buy some groceries and come back.
Wow.
And I had to go through this yard and go straight down and back and get back. Well, coming back, I got what? Lost! I remember being frantic. And finally I saw something that, after going up and down the place and I ran into the sea, so I knew I missed the house. I ran into the store, so I knew I missed the house.
You didn't have your cell phone with you?
GPS.
Don't you?
I gotta follow you.
Here's the thing. My world have grown over time, from Belize City to the country to America, from Navasota to Texas. Now I'm up in Minnesota. You know, not only can our knowledge grow, but our behavior can grow. Prudent behavior. Prudence is kind of an old word. You know, how many of y'all said you should act prudently rather than rashly? So here we can see that this is for us to receive instruction. But here's the thing. How many times, and I feel bad for teachers, they teach, but the kids don't receive the knowledge. We have another proverb, in one ear and the other.
Yeah.
Okay? Again, that's why I say Proverbs is such a fascinating study. How many people, they receive it, but they do what? Nothing with it. It's as if though somebody gave you $1 million, but you don't know anything about money, and it just sits in your bank account. What good is $1 million in a person who doesn't know what to do anything with money? It's worthless. Okay? So Proverbs is for gaining wisdom so that you can know what to do. But it's not only knowing, it's actually what you actually do. And there's prudent action and there's rudely rough action. I know a guy who was extremely rich, but he was a clod. You know, couldn't even eating his soup. You know, no. I mean, bad behavior is what?
Bad behavior.
Bad behavior. I mean, doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter if a person have bad behavior. They have what?
Attitude problems.
Attitude. We have used different words here, and so here it says, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior. And the reason you need to receive instruction so that you can do what is right and just and fair. And we have heard this before. In the last few books we studied, I've said the saying over and over. As Christians, we should do the right thing in the right way at the right time, all the time. We should, do what is right. But here's the thing. We have to know what the rules are to know what is right and wrong. What's appropriate behavior and what's inappropriate behavior. But I remember as a kid, let's be realistic. Have you ever noticed that kids are shameless? They don't know right from wrong. They see something they want it, they just what? They just take it. As parents, we have to teach them right from wrong. They go to school, and some kids bully other kids because they don't know what is appropriate. And that's what we're talking about, to teach them prudent behavior so that they can act right. But beyond doing the right thing, we need to know that we need to do the right thing for the right reason. And so it goes on and says, so they can discern what is right and prudent and do the right thing, which is just and fair. Just and fair. Most of us, if we're going to share something, we think 50-50 is the right thing. But what if somebody doesn't deserve 50%? You have two workers that are working. One does most of the work and the other one slacks off. Is it right to give them 50-50? Pay, we go to work, and the worst thing I think work have done for our society is they pay people not based on what they produce, but based on what?
Hours.
The hours. You show up for 8 hours, you get 8 hours pay. Regardless if you produce or... Have y'all ever seen people who were there for 8 hours, but they actually produced the work for what?
I've seen people.
1 hour or less.
I worked with a lot of those people.
Yeah.
I see people that come 10 minutes late every day.
Every day. And I know, I worked in the prison system, and I'd get into work and I'd start working, and some people came in late, and then the first 20, 30 minutes they're talking to their friends about what happened the night before, drinking their coffee,
Walking
and then,
around.
and then every hour or so they come out and they have to chat again. I'm like, this is trying to teach us to do what is right, but what is fair and just. And it's not just, superficial knowledge. Not just, but for us to really think deeply. As a matter of fact, this is my opinion, thinking is the hardest thing that people can do. And most people don't think. They think because, but they really don't. They don't really think. Because if they were thinking, would they do what they were doing? Or say what they say? And that's what this proverb is saying. They want to teach you to gain knowledge and, and all this so that you can change your behavior. But it starts in here first, because here's the thing. We can sin in our thoughts, we can sin with our words, or we can sin with our actions. Where does it start? Thought to words to action. And so where Solomon wants to start is for us to gain wisdom, instruction for understanding, words of insight, so that we can receive instruction that is prudent for doing what is right, fair, and just. And he goes on and said, for giving prudence to those who are simple. And a lot of us think simple means stupid. No. Uneducated. I can tell you, here's the truth. We all start out the same. Babies. We have to learn our language, and we have to learn right and wrong behavior, and we have to learn all those different things. The difference between stupid and ignorance. Do y'all know what the difference between stupid and ignorance is?
No, I'm ignorant.
Ignorance means not knowing.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm ignorant about a lot of things. And I want to remain ignorant about certain things. Okay?
I don't want to know a lot.
I don't want to know. I'm not going to be a brain surgeon or rocket scientist or anything. What I am not ignorant in, though, is what? The Bible. Okay? Ignorance. But here's the thing. Stupid. Stupid is to know better but not do better.
Yeah. Or not care.
Or don't care. If you don't know better, that's one thing. I can educate you, teach you. Okay? I was ignorant about lots of things. I got instruction in it. Stupidity is when you learn, but you don't do better. And so Solomon is saying, for those people who are ignorant, that are simple, hey, they can gain. They can, for giving prudent to those who are simple. Knowledge and discernment to the young. And I started off by pointing out that the best people to be in the book of Proverbs would be what? Young people. Young people. Unfortunately, young people
Don't care.
don't want to learn. But the book of Proverbs is written to instruct the young. And I remember being a 13-year-old kid in Sunday school with Mr. B, and he read this and said, cowboy, you're young. If you want to get smarter and wiser and live better life, you can gain insight. You can gain knowledge. You don't have to remain as you are. And I took that to heart, come on, I come from single parent, number 7 out of 8, dirt poor. And here was the possibility of what? Doing better, improving, and I was young, so the only thing I had was my age. So I start applying, gaining knowledge, And then I learned discretion. Because again, knowledge is the bottom level. And in society, we try to get everybody at that bottom level. Read, write, do certain things. The truth is, have you ever had a kid go through 12 years of school and can't read and write? Can't do certain things? It's a shame. I can bet dollars for donuts we could go right down the street here, and there are some kids who are in special ed, and I know this for a fact because one of the special ed teacher goes to Otter Tail Church, and some of those kids can't read, write, and do. But the good news for us, it doesn't matter how uneducated, ignorant, or simple we are, we can all what? Improve and get better. It's not just for the young, but also old people. Because we have another saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But can we? Yeah.
Sure.
Doesn't matter what age we are, we can learn and grow.
Am I a
Brett, wait till you get
example?
home. She's gonna
Yes, you will.
smack you around. And so here's the advice. And this is great advice. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. So it doesn't matter where you are on the scale. If you're wise, you can get wiser. You can add to your learning. I can add, you can add, we all can grow. And let the discerning get guidance for understanding proverbs and parable. And I want to
ask God for help
Amen.
every day.
Well,
For
and
learning.
that's why we do these Bible studies.
Yeah.
Is to get better.
Here's what I learned. The more you know, the more you can learn.
Yeah.
The less you know, the more you will lose. Jesus said, to those who have much, more will be given. And to those who have little, even the little they have will be taken away. A lot of us think of that only as material things, but also knowledge and spirit and all those things.
I had a friend that she was in her late 80s, like I am, and she would forget something, and she'd say, "Oh, I know, it's filed way back here, and I'll think of it later on." And she did. She'd always think of it later on. Get it out.
So here's the thing. No matter who we are and where we are on the scale of learning,
Don't you look at me like that for?
we can learn. But here's the thing, and I know this for a fact. Have you ever met people who think they know it all and there's nothing new they can learn?
I'm sitting right here.
So we need to come with an attitude of being open to learn. We need to come with an attitude with being open to what? Learn. I mean, I adapted the attitude long time ago that I will continue to learn for the rest of my life. I don't know it all.
Never too old for
Never too old to learn. And we can always get more. And so that's what Proverbs is telling us. We can always learn more of Proverbs. And then the second part, it says Proverbs and parables. Jesus mainly taught in what? Parables. He was called the master teacher. Okay? We can learn more. And then it goes on, for the saying on riddles of the wise. So there's a lot of people out there who are smarter than me, and we can learn from them. Here's the thing. We don't have to do all the work ourselves. There are people who print a thing called books. Unfortunately, a lot of them sit in the library and gather nothing but dust. Paul Andrew Carnegie, the richest man once upon a time, built all these libraries. And guess what happened to most of the books? 3% of the people use the library. 3%. So here's the thing. You can learn, A book is really just somebody else's wisdom distilled into a way to teach you faster. That's all it is. And we can learn from others. This is a book that we can learn in. But the most important thing that we see, it's not just gaining knowledge for knowledge's sake, because we can gain knowledge in math, in science, in different, different fields. But as Christians, we know, here's the key verse, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And I think this really describes people. Do we actually respect God? Do we acknowledge God? Do we follow God? Or are we fools? And I mentioned there's a difference between being ignorant and being stupid or a fool. Okay? Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And unfortunately, I see a lot of fools, they go to school. Do they respect their teachers? Do they respect their parents? Do they respect grandparents? Do they respect pastors or anybody else? I mean, we live in a society where there's a lot of young people and they then grow up into adults and they're still disrespectful to the law and to society. I spent 26 years in prison. I saw a lot of fools.
So you can identify them.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I walk through the school system and all the kids that are being disrespectful, that they have the attitude, they think might makes right. They think, they bully the smart kids or bully kids because, money is more important than.
Well, my
So-
son drives to pick up kids for the freshwater. He had all the way to Long Prairie to pick up one kid and stuff, and what's he hears from them and stuff just in the bus.
Yeah.
It's terrible from parents that need special.
Yeah. So here's the thing. The fear of the Lord is just the beginning. Beginning is like if though you're in preschool and you're learning what? The ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s. But as Christians, should we just be at the beginning?
Hope not.
Hope not. We should grow into mature Christians. And so the purpose of Proverbs is for us to go from the beginning and progress. Fear of the Lord is just the beginning. And fools despise wisdom and instruction. And so part of what we need to do is to have an attitude of wanting to learn. That we don't know it all. We are appreciative to learn, and it's a journey. And so let's start with that journey. And it says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They are a garland of grace to grace your head, and a chain to adorn your neck. My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, 'Come along with us, let's lie in wait for innocent blood. Let ambush some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and whole like those who go down in the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Cast lots with us. We will all share the loot. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, for their feet rush into evil. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gains. It takes away the life of those who gets it. I remember Mr. B pointing out to me, Cowboy, you're in high school. And there are some kids that are using drugs and stuff, and they say, hey, let's do this, let's do that. Don't fall for it. But how many kids give in to what? Peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
How many kids do things that they, Here's what I want to do is back up to that first verse. Verse 9. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction and do not forsake your mother's teaching. As parents, they have the responsibility to start the foundation to teach their kids. Unfortunately, depending on what family you're born into, what do they teach you?
Nothing.
Not that.
Not much.
I can tell you, I worked in prisons and I had a father and son in prison. Father was older, son was middle age, and then the grandson came into prison. It's one prison with 3 generations.
Wow.
I was born in a family that some of the things that they did was not the best. Okay? One sister got pregnant at 17, the other one got pregnant at 15. Brothers that had to get married. But here's the thing. Our instructions start where? At home.
Parents.
And the advice here is listen to what's happening. But it then moves on from beyond the home to outside the home. It says, my son, it is if sinful men entice you. Okay. And let's be realistic. Entice. Tempt you. Okay. Is there temptation all around?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. They can entice you. They go, hey, go do this and I'll pay you this. Or go do whatever. They can entice you, but does that mean you have to go along with him? So here is my advice. I'm not smarter than Solomon, but depending on your background, if you have a good family that teach you good values, great. But what if you have a bad family, like I had? What do you do? Find somebody who,
It's tougher.
to me, becoming a Christian and adopting the Christian values and teachings and instructions was the greatest thing. Where it says the fear of the Lord is the what? Beginning of wisdom. So, and the reason I reached that conclusion is while in prison, inmates used to say, Chaplain, you don't understand. My background was so bad that what I learned at home was, and that's why grandparent, son, and grandson are in this same prison. I had little or no chance because of environment. Well, the truth is, ultimately, we cannot blame the environment.
Would you say that, how many children in your family?
8.
7 out of 7. What happened to the other 7?
Some of them did well too.
Did they? They
Yeah.
picked up on the same
Yes.
advice that you get.
Yes. Some, not. There's bad apples. I won't. I have one brother. I told my kids, if this brother shows up, close the door and call the police. Don't let him in. I mean, he's a brother, but guess what? My kid is 32 and 27, and they've never met him, and I hope they never will. Environment does influence us. But just because we were born into that environment doesn't mean we have to stay there. I have this saying, we're human beings, we're not a tree.
Learn to say no.
We can move. I did. I moved,
Halfway around the world.
Yeah, almost.
Sometime, and I took the scripture literal. Jesus said, unless you're willing to leave father and mother and brother and sister and, for my sake, I left. But then again, maybe I read the Bible a little bit too. But here's the thing. I gained insight and wisdom. I would not change my family background because I gained what?
Exactly.
I
Right.
gained from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? If you are born in a good family that has good values and good... I was born in bad family with little or no... But those are all excuses. Ultimately, we can be enticed or tempted to do what is wrong, what is unjust, what is selfish, or we can learn to do what is right, what is just, and what is fair.
You respect
We can
more-
learn.
You respect more somebody like you, where you came from and what you've ended up to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you
You
have
can-
a lot of respect.
You can learn. And all of us, I don't know what backgrounds. Some people have great backgrounds. Some people, we can all grow and be better.
I think because I came from a really, I never knew there was, I always knew there was a God. I always knew there was Christ. I can't remember ever. But my sins got greater.
Yeah.
Because I was wiser. If I lied, that was a real sin, to me. So I probably wound up to be as bad in my side as you are,
Yeah.
in your side. I don't know.
So-
But that's the way I felt, was that I was more aware of sin.
Yeah.
And
So listen to this verse here, verse 10. If sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. I remember as a little kid, one of my brothers would get in a fight with me and would beat on me until I say what? Uncle. To give in. Okay? The problem is giving in points out a deficit in character. When we give in to
Well, you do it once and it's easier to do it again.
next time, it's easier the next time and the next time. And the scripture is saying, if they entice you, don't give in. In the New Testament, it's said in the same way. It says, stand firm. Instead of giving in, we should what? Stand firm.
And I like that part in the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Yeah.
I need
And-
that support.
And so this whole thing here, that it's starting in verse 11. If they say, come along with us, let's lie and do, Mr. B pointed out, if they say, let's go do a little drugs, let's go steal this. The reality is, we end with this verse where it says, they only ambush themselves. They only hurt who? Themselves. Whatever we put out, some people believe in the law of karma. Whatever you put out returns to you. From the biblical, Jesus said, you reap what you sow.
And you sure do.
I call it the law of cause and effect.
Mhm.
Okay? We reap what we sow. What if you put good stuff in, you get good stuff out. But what if you put bad things in? And it starts with our mind. If you fill your mind with garbage, what do you expect to get out of it?
Garbage.
Garbage. But if you put good stuff in, what do you...
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
For sure.
And so, as I read this, obviously we are Christian. None of us would go stealing and murdering and robbing and taking advantage of anybody else. We are not enticed. But in reality is, we also need to understand the important thing is we do reap what we sow. We think that, hey, we get away with it. But we might get away with it for a little while. As a matter of fact, what I learned in prison was a lot of inmates thought they were so smart, they got away with it once, they got away with it twice, that they thought they would never get what? Caught. Until they got caught.
Yeah.
And then they go, okay, well, some of them while in prison were thinking up a better way so that they won't get caught
the
next time.
Yeah.
What amazes me about you is that you lived with outlaws, so to speak, and then you went to work for a prison where you were around them all the time. Again. And it kind of surprises me, but maybe you had a lot of insight and you helped them much more than a person that went in as a saint.
As a matter of fact, I was good at what I did as a chaplain.
Yeah.
Whenever inmates came in with attitude, I go, listen, buddy, you know, been there, done that.
I've probably been there, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, you can choose. We all have a choice. We can remain stupid and ignorant, or we can learn and gain and get better. Life is a process. It's not a destination, it's a process. It's a journey. On this journey, we can get better. Until we are called home, we can grow.
It's an adventure.
You know, put it in a Methodist way. Okay. John Wesley say we can become more holy. We can grow. Isn't that the Christian life? We should grow into holiness. We can get better. So, don't fall for it. As a matter of fact, have you ever heard that we have met the enemy and the enemy is?
Ours.
It's us.
It's us.
We're our own
We
enemy.
are our own worst enemies. So many times we want to blame other people. But when you're pointing the finger, don't forget that, it starts with self. He goes on, such paths of all those who go down get short, cursed. I don't know about you, but I met a lot of them in prison. Okay, we'll end there we didn't, as I told you, we won't get finished with verse.
Okay, well, who do you think's the fool in this story? Is this man